Turn your, we can't hear you, Tina. Turn your volume up. You're muted now.
Nope, can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Tina. Turn your volume up. Turn your volume up. You're muted now. The volume on your computer.
Can somebody else take roll call?
I can take the roll call. I'll take the roll call, Tina.
Okay.
All right, wait.
Turn your volume.
Gina Sakala.
You're muted. The volume on your computer.
I'm here. Can somebody else take roll call?
Yep, we're doing it. Okay.
All right, wait. When did you say here?
Here.
Gina Sakala. Walter Cruzell, here. Cindy Mangini.
Here.
Doug McSellen. Not here. When did you say here? Tina LeBlanc. Walter Cruzell, here. Sorry about that. That was me. All right. Tim Neville.
Here.
Bethany Olet.
Here.
Marie Pisner. Charlotte Riley.
Here.
Scott Ryder.
Here.
Donna Suzak.
Here.
Melissa Everett. Just got a message that she's waiting to get in. Jaime Cisneros. Christopher Cycli.
Here.
Jeffrey Lewinowitz.
Here.
I think that's everyone.
Okay, I keep getting an email from Melissa, but I'm not getting her signing on.
And I don't have her sitting in a waiting room, so let me try to call her.
All right.
All right, I just forwarded her and Jamie the agenda too, just before the meeting, because they never got it.
I sent it. Well. All right. Did the roll call. Can I take a motion to approve the minutes from May 14th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Raise your hand. Do I have any abstentions? Any nays? Okay, so we have, oh great, can't even count them. All in favor? No negatives and no abstentions. Okay, and this is Tom. Tom, is that you? Tom Hubbard? On the phone?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
This is John Carlo from BL Companies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had to call in. Sorry.
That's all right.
For some reason I can't connect through video.
All right. But we have John's here as well, and he's on video. So, okay. So approve the minutes. We have special guests. It's the master plan. Sorry, it's been a while since we've been able to meet and hear about anything new and different that's happening. And at this point, I'm going to turn the meeting over to John Ireland from BL. John?
Unmute to work. So thank you. I'm glad we were able to get together and appreciate your flexibility in putting together a Zoom meeting, so that is good. So we've got quite a few things to cover, and I think we met last week with Jeffrey and Donald and went through, so I was going to share screen. So I think that function should work. And I'm going to slide over and maximize there. Is everybody okay with the view?
I can see.
Okay. So what I'll do is run through and hopefully, and Giancarlo, can you see?
I can see the screen, yes.
Okay, good. Because we will, so we'll get started. We've put together an update and we've touched just about every slide since we last got together. I know it's been a while and certainly understandable. We've added quite a bit more in depth into our recommendations and a lot of detail, so I want to get to that. We are also making the first pass at final recommendations. I always laugh because it's difficult to say it's a draft of final recommendations, but it is the first pass. So this will be the first time that you will see everything in the form of recommendations as opposed to possibilities and options. We've also developed a timeline. So you're going to start to see at each of the facilities year 1, year 2, year 3. And while we still want to develop that, I think our goal tonight is to start to put in front of you some of the first steps and the first several years worth of the steps or phases of the master plan. And I'm always challenged in this format, and I think we've used a couple of things, but as far as questions, I think, let's see, I should have looked before, but do you have our raise the hand option or?
We do, and I know that does. Are you comfortable with that? I was thinking that we could go around at certain points and just hit every person, and if they have a comment or question, they could ask it. Whichever is better for you.
Again, they both work. Everything is good. So why don't I pause at kind of the major pause points. In other words, we're going to go through an introduction and then we're going to get to Jablonski. I think there's a lot of information there. I'll pause there.
That's what I was, yes.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds good. And that way everybody, because what's happening is I'm only seeing part of the screen as far as hands up. And so if we just take intermittent places where we ask our questions or make our comments, and we do them just one person after the other, everybody will get their say.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
All right, go ahead.
Oh, I'm going to go back just as a quick refresher. I think when we first got together, boy, and it's been, I don't even know, it's been probably a year plus. There was a consideration of all 20 town facilities. Tonight, we're just focusing on 10 of your town facilities. So they all do interrelate, and they're highlighted there on the screen. So we're going to begin with Jablonski, and we're going to look at a conceptual design. I think the main point of starting here is that this is the project that I think has been both on your agenda for the longest time. And there's a lot of thought and consideration that's gone into multiple steps to get there. But the first one is going to be to combine all of the town-owned properties, and we'll see that in a minute, into one parcel. So in the 10-year plan, this allows for enough area to accomplish, we think, everything that can be anticipated at this time. And one of the first things, and it's driving one of the phases, the first phases is the fueling. So at the police facility, their underground storage tank becomes due for renewal. And that led to a discussion of how fueling is happening with the town. How is fueling happening here at the DPW site? So that tank becomes due, I think, in the following year, but they're all coming due. And what does coming due mean? The state licenses, regulates underground storage tanks. They can be above ground, but you will spend town dollars to replace that tank. So the proposal includes a new fueling depot with above ground tanks. there are two trains of thought in short in planning. You can go below ground or above ground, and they're fairly cost similar because the amount of money that you do in double wall tanks versus above ground tanks is fairly cost neutral. So when you have enough space, it makes sense to put them above ground. It makes the containment, it makes taking care of them, it makes using them easier. So that's the first step in the overall plan here, is to consider where would that go. The current fueling at Jablonski at the DPW building is more or less uptight to the building. It evolved over time. It is fairly constrained. And again, that's what's driving that first piece. We're proposing to build additions, and you'll see as we go through, the additions to the building are sized based on the current building and grounds facility. And we're going to see that and it's at roughly 10 to 11,000 square feet at that site. So we took that program information, applied it here. And as we did, we looked at the economy of bringing everybody under one roof. In other words, what are the facilities that can be shared? What are the facilities that don't have to be duplicated if you're at two sites? Everything from lockers, reporting rooms, ready rooms, cafeterias, meeting rooms. Even some of the office functions will work better under one roof. The next piece was additional parking. And the photovoltaic or the photo array or the ability to generate electricity is something that you are looking at and have some within the town. But it made sense to propose a covered parking. And again, whether that happens in 5th year, 6th year, 7th year, but it starts to, I think, visually communicate that the town is looking at ways of conserving energy. The town may eventually look at electric vehicles. I think you're looking at those options at times, electric vehicles. But it starts to open that part of the dialogue. And then the next piece is the animal control facility. Again, we'll get to that facility, but we are proposing to relocate the animal control facility to the now combined site. So tonight we're going to review the conceptual site plan. We've got updates on site plan, the building floor plan, and we're going to start to see for the first time some 3D images of what the site and building could look like. So year one, we're proposing to submit the consolidated site plan to planning and zoning. Building and grounds would move on a temporary basis, partially to this site and to the annex. And then I need to move this over. Begin in year one, the detailed design of the site and building. Year two, and it will take time to design the site, the building, start to think about phasing. You'll want to remain in operation full time, and then publicly bid this. So that's out at year two. Year two will also include the ground fueling tanks, coming up out of the ground and located on the site. Year two, construct the animal control facility. Year four, 3 through 4 is the construction of the Jablonski facility. And you'll start to see that as we look at the plan. And it will take that kind of time to phase through, particularly in occupied construction. Giancarlo is going to show you some of the ideas of how it can be constructed and still leaving the current functions and operations of DPW in place there. Year 5 could be the bridge and the culvert, the roadway that connects the police department facility with this facility. Year 6 could be a part of the emergency medical services, the EMS master plan, and possible construction at this site. So again, that's the first time you're seeing the timeline. And maybe I will pause there before we start to look at the images and see if there's any questions.
Bethany, you have any questions?
No, I'm good.
Tim?
Yeah, I just have one. I noticed that you're locating the fueling depot for the police department vehicles on site in year 2, but you're not constructing the culvert and bridge, the roadway that connects the PD and the Jablonski place. Is there a reason for that, or?
Yes, good question. So the bridge and the connection will cross the current wetlands. We believe that the time involved to approve that and plan that, one, will take time. I think the second piece of that discussion says that, is there anything wrong with driving out to the light, taking a right on Moody Road and coming on around? And I think there is nothing technically wrong with that. But there can be an argument, do we need this interconnection? And I think the more you look at it, I think the answer is not just for fueling, but also for impounding vehicles, for maintenance of the police vehicles, for all of the things, and some of the larger vehicles, by the way. They have some of the command control vehicles on site. It seems to make sense to have this interconnect. So we have to move on the fueling because it's time sensitive and it is a permit that's going to expire. But the crossing and the bridge is not as time sensitive. So that was the thought. That was the rationale behind that.
That makes sense. Particularly the issue of time sensitive. I just I'd forgotten about that, but that's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Marie, have you joined us? Do you have any questions? Walter? Any questions?
I'm good. Thank you.
Wendy?
No questions, thank you.
Has Tina joined us? Tina LeBlanc?
Yes, no questions. Thank you.
You're welcome. Scott Ryder?
Nothing yet, thank you.
Charlotte?
I'm okay for right now. Thanks.
Cindy?
I'm good, thank you.
Gina?
None at this time. Thank you.
Okay, Melissa, have you joined us? Jamie? And that leaves me. I don't have any questions at this time, but we would be able to move over temporarily everybody from buildings and grounds to be able to start marketing that building.
I think between here and the annex, I think is what the thinking is.
That would be our swings. The annex again would be our swing space to accomplish this whole.
And the shop, the wood shop. Yep, the wood shop is already functioning there. I think we've also talked about some containerized until the additions can be built, but some of the equipment will have to be in containers. But yes.
Okay, Jeff, do you have any comments or that you'd like to add at this point? Jeff?
I'm all set for right now. I was actually working with John Ireland quite a bit, going back and forth and how we would move B and G. So if there's something that John has a problem answering, I'd be more than happy to try to answer and provide clarity for you.
Okay, I just want to make sure you don't have any questions or concerns because things sometimes look different when you start to present them to.
This is Melissa, I was muted. I'm fine, no questions either.
Okay. All right, John, turn it back to you for the next part. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, get that cursor back on there. Yeah. So here again is the aerial view of the current facility. And I won't spend too much time because we're going to start to see this as it evolves through the conceptual design at this point. Main building here, the original building, the larger garage building here, additions here, and then these garage bays here. We've configured the truck wash. It's not in this aerial view, but salt shed and storage buildings here, garage buildings. So right now, and I think we're going to come back to this and talk about this, this is a one-way. You enter the site here, and most of the vehicles exit here. And again, Giancarlo is going to talk to you about some of the thoughts that go into reconfiguring and joining this site with the parcel up front. So you've seen this before. It is the zoning analysis. What is constraining us right now is that this is one parcel. So once it is combined with the other parcels, those constraints will go away. And it's, it's the typical setbacks. It's the amount of coverage. And quite frankly, you're utilizing every inch of this site. So there really isn't any room for expansion. So yet another reason to combine all of these sites. Square footage, again, we're going to have this in the final binder with each of the facilities, kind of summarizes each piece and where the square footages add up. So that's the basis for the plan. So here is the site plan for the first time. And what we asked our civil group to do was to, instead of us architecturally looking at this, the civil engineers looked at this, and I said, hey, if you were to connect the police building with the DPW site, how would you do it? And I think our first impulse, by the way, architecturally was kind of to cross, if you can see my cursor, somewhere along here, because it seemed to be the straightest line. And they took a look at it and said, well, a couple of things. One, this is the main police drive. There's a gate here. This is a better place to connect. And more important than that, it gives us a better opportunity to grade and cross the wetlands here. So that's the thinking that went into this. And again, back to the conversation about the complexity of crossing a wetlands. It's either a bridge, a culvert, still needs to be designed, but conceptually, we've also taken a look at an older stormwater management study. And again, don't see any concerns with proposing to cross or to culvert the wetlands. So it does seem feasible. It would be a two-way road. In other words, vehicles, you're in a gated area here. We'd probably but we probably propose a gate here. So this would be strictly a private drive only for town vehicles controlled by the town. It is not intended to be a road. So that's kind of where civil was coming in. We talked about earlier, and here is where we're currently configuring the animal control facility. It seems to make sense to make it more visible, more accessible, and that's why it's off of Moody Road. There is ample room, although we've got some topography here, but there is ample room over here for this and potentially other facilities. Whether this interconnects with the road is another question. Can certainly be done. We know that the canine facility with the police is entirely different than the animal control facility. On the other hand, if there ever was a time when they needed any of that facility, there might be some, I don't know what the right word is, the continuity or shared benefit of having the animal control facility there. But again, we're not thinking that they're connected at all. Moving on, and we're going to go in more detail. I won't spend time on it now, but the blue area with the red area of circulation is the addition, and we're going to look at that in more detail. There are a entirely new circulation pattern proposed. Here in the center is the fueling station. And right now the thinking is that there would be a 2-lane fueling station. The predominant lane is on this side for driver's side, left side fueling, which is the predominant fueling side for majority of the vehicles. The other side though, and overflow and wraparound for additional fueling is shown as well. Here is additional and new parking for town-owned vehicles, and that you'll start to see in the renderings is covered with a solar shade. It's both a shade, a shelter, and a solar array. The thinking is it could be, I think of it as a visual side of things on the site. And again, you'll see that in 3D. So I'm going to keep moving because we're going to pause before we go. We'll pause at the building. How's that sound? here were some of the examples of some ways of covering parking and putting solar arrays on, and you'll see that again in a 3D rendering coming up. And here is, a view of the floor plan. So what you're seeing, the gray area is the existing building. The main garage is here. The current bayed garages are here. This is the current entry. And we are proposing to keep that. And again, Giancarlo will explain a little bit more as we work our way around. But it lends itself, the dotted line then is the line of the addition, and that's the areas in blue, and the reddish color here, the terracotta, color here is the site circulation. I think one of the keys here as we look at this, and again, we're going to talk about a new entry, the intent here is to have a public space. And there are doors, if you can see them, I know it's hard to see at this scale, but there are doors here on this corridor and doors here on this corridor. So public would enter here in this floor plan and would be able to access administration here. We would probably move up several of the functions here to the front of the building. So if I needed to pick up an application for anything, I would go to the window and grab that application. I could probably even fill it out in the lobby and return it. If I'm coming for a meeting and it's a larger meeting, there's a waiting area here. If I'm coming for a meeting and someone knows I'm there, they can buzz me on in. So there's thought to separating. Currently, as you know, there is a separate public entrance. I'm not sure how often it's used, but this makes a more clearer definition of public and staff functional space. Because as you know, this facility can be open 24/7. Operations are ongoing, and we think it's best to propose this dual use of the facility. Up front, by the way, restrooms, conference room, large-scale conference room could be used for, obviously, these meetings, the meetings we're having this evening, for when we finally all able to get back together. It could be subdivided. It could be used for all staff meetings, could be used for training, and then other meeting rooms. The balance of this is we haven't finalized the program, but identified space to reconfigure, both extend locker rooms, extend storage, other spaces along the exterior. We are proposing to infill the courtyard. And the reason we're doing that is to expand cafeteria, could be overnight, could be also reporting rooms. Again, haven't worked out all the details. The circulation continues in its current position here, but also can interconnect through here. And we're still looking at ways of interconnecting. And so with that, Giancarlo, if you're still there, I think you are, we're going to start to see
still here.
Yeah, see that on the current site plan.
Right. So here on the current site plan, you can see the entry on the lower part of the image. And currently you're sharing that drive lane is occupied with delivery, fueling. All your vehicles are traveling down that lane and wrapping toward the back, as John's sort of describing with the cursor. A portion of the addition is actually concealing the existing fuel station there where the 3 garage bay is. And you'll see in the next few slides how that has been positioned for access for both fueling and deliveries are now separated. The other point I think here was we focused on, another idea was that the delivery using this entry lane along the building is that the delivery would have a one-way passage and could wrap around the building and exit to the upper side, sort of described there. And another point too, with the employee entry provides really good access, sort of direct access into those internal spaces without having to mix with the public area. And so you'll see that as well, that parking area is also identified in the next slide. I think we can
go.
Yeah. So here's the concept view of that entry area. And so what you're seeing, we'll look at the lanes. You'll see the delivery lane on the far left, which comes in directly and passes by the public entry, which is identified by that glass structure. And the middle lane is basically the exit lane, which is exiting from the fuel station, and that's a one-way out. And the far lane on the right is one-way fuel lane, which also provides access to the town vehicle parking and shaded structure with the solar array system and charging stations, as part of that concept. And I think also on this slide, you'll notice there is the addition on the one story to the left side of the glass entry. And you'll notice there's the employee entry with the glass gable skylight above there. And in the background, the brick building you'll see a portion of the 3-bay garage, which we'll see in the next slide. And so here, this is a little bit of a close-up as we start to approach, and we're like in the lane. You see the fuel station in the distance, the delivery station, or actually the delivery lane as well. We're assuming there would be maybe a gated entry that would be controlled as well, which then would have exiting and access around the building. I think we can go to the next slide. And so here, as you enter the site, you have the solar array to the left. Now you're toward the back of the fuel station. You can see the lane, how this is the driver's side fueling area, as John described. And in the distance, you can kind of see through that structure. You see the 3-bay garage addition. As you move toward the front of the site, and you see the sort of extension of the conference room, the offices, that portion of the project, and the entry is defined there. We were thinking that potentially could also have a solar array on that roof, which you'll see on another slide. I think, yeah. So in this view here, this is a view, so we're looking toward that single axis, one way for delivery. We're seeing the exit lane, which allows the fueling to wrap around, and also from the police station, if they're fueling here, they can exit out that lane. So each of those are segregated. And to the left, you see the solar array system and additional parking there for the vehicles. I think we can. So in this slide here, we're seeing this is the public parking area. So it's identified. You can see if you follow the curbs around on the entry, parking here, people can enter, come into that public area, identified by the concept of this steel structure with glass. We're thinking maybe to integrate the existing CMU patterned material, which would be an extension of that existing. So if you see the employee entry with the gabled roof, you can imagine that from that point on, there's your extension of the addition. for the new facility, the new renovation. I think, let me think here. And I think this integrates well. If you look at the slide, so the structure is kind of integrating well with the solar array structure and the fueling station. So the pallet, the intention is that the pallet is working together with some of the utility of those materials of glass, CMU, and steel. We can maybe go to the next slide. Right, so this is more of a little close-up to the public entry area, sort of defining that covered entry, which we thought was a nice idea. So it allows people to congregate. You can come to that public lobby and also gather underneath the canopy, which provides some nice, protection from the weather. The fueling station in the distance, currently we laid out a 10,000 gallon tank in line. So we have 3 of those currently in this, in the project. And one nice feature here is there's a connection across. Well, that's something I think we have to work out, but the connection across from the town parking, solar array area, connecting back here across to the public area, and then obviously there's a connection back to facilities in the grounds. I think we can go to the next slide. So here's the aerial, which I think gives a good idea of the overall planning. And so the idea here is that if you're looking at the addition to the existing facility, that the thinking here is that you could build this addition without disrupting operations. Right? So that whole portion of sort of described by the cursor is a thinking there that would be built, and we could do that successfully without disrupting too much of the operations. One thing you see here in this view as well is to the far left, that parking area is zoned and also has a gate or a fence or something that's monitored as well for employee parking, and isolates all the public parking in more of the central area. And I think, should we pause for any questions here?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah, no, I think now would be a good time to pause, and we can obviously go back. Let's pause there.
All right, I'm gonna use the same list next time. We'll have somebody else start first. Doug, if you've joined us. Okay, Bethany, any questions?
The only question I had was if consideration has been taken on the recycling that currently happens at DPW, batteries and oil, and how this site plan will work with that. Does it hinder it in any way? These lanes look a little confusing.
I think it doesn't hinder it. I think, again, as we talked conceptually, I know this looks like it's a finished model, and it is. I mean, we've added everything, but it is a work in progress in that there would be a public side of, it might be, whether it makes sense to do it or integrate it into a lane or a pull off, whether it makes sense to keep it on the public side and integrate it into that thinking. So yes, I don't think it hinders it in any way. Is it accounted for specifically? No, not at this time. But I think the planning of the zoning, so to speak, in other words, the thought of separating public-private functions can be adapted to make sure that we pick up batteries, oil, and all the recycling. So,
good question, Bethany. Tim?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. One, I'm looking at the driveways going in, the fuel driveway and the one way and the delivery one way. One, how does delivery exit if it's one way? Do they go around the building and come out the other way?
Right.
The additional question that go with that, the fuel coming in, they're all, right now, the police all have cards that gets them into the gate and stuff like that. Are there gonna be gates there? Because if there are not gates, people are gonna drive down them, I think.
Right, right. You're absolutely right, Tim. There will be gates, and we started to think about that, here and here. We haven't really flushed out all the gates. To go back to your first question, deliveries currently do go a one-way traffic around the site and exit over here. So often some of the deliveries are back by the garage bay, some maybe back by the larger garage, and it works well. I think that pattern will continue. I don't see any reason to interrupt that one-way pattern. And then you're absolutely right. There does need to be not only gates, but also signs to start to reorient and start for everybody to understand this change. Do not enter, exit only, entry, town vehicles only. And I think you'd set the gate back so I'd have long enough to at least see it turn back out. The other thing is we work, with Jeffrey and Donald is the stacking of vehicles. We like the long configuration because there are times when you stack quite a few vehicles. And while there'll be two fueling positions here and a third one over here, the queuing and the ability to move vehicles through and kind of wrap them around. We'll look at, the details of that, but it's, we're almost saying the further back, the better for the fueling depot, not so far that it, and this is rendered flat, but not so far that it's way out there, but that's part of the thought that went into that lane.
Okay, I don't mean to be nitpicky. I'm just looking at it, just thinking out loud. But how do the DPW vehicles and the trucks and the trash trucks and all that stuff get through? Because it looked like they all park or store their vehicles down back by the garages.
So again, if this is gated, I would still enter the site one way.
Okay.
There's room. There's plenty of maneuvering room here.
Okay.
To configure and access other parts of the site. This is the future drive lane over to police there.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, a lot of maneuvering room here. So,
no problem. Thank you.
I'm going to get to everybody with their hand up. I'm just going in a fashion of how names I have listed. So everybody just hang tight. I'm going to get to them. Walter, any questions?
No, so far they've asked what I've had, so I'm good.
Good. Wendy?
No questions. Thank you.
Tina LeBlanc?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Scott? Scott, you still with me?
I am. No, I'm okay. Tim asked one of the questions I was going to ask about signage and gates, but
Great.
we know that that's all coming.
Good. Charlotte?
Yeah. My internet kind of glitched in the middle of when you were talking about the fuel tanks. So they can fuel on either side of that, correct?
correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Predominantly Charlotte, it's on the driver's side, double on the driver's side and then swing around. It's still driver's side, but the one way in to stack vehicles, that's the, the double fuel.
Okay.
There's
And
two
there was
positions.
two tanks.
Yep.
And how many gallons technically could a thing fit under there?
We are showing 3 10,000 gallon tanks right now.
Okay.
Okay,
And then-
Cindy?
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No questions, but thank you. Very good presentation.
Charlotte, I cut you off. Do you have another question?
Yeah, and the VL guys might not know the answer to this, but maybe Donna or anybody else in facilities might. With the above ground tanks, how often do we have to replace them, or do we not have to like you do in underground?
And
I don't know if
Jeffrey
anybody
may
knows that one.
be able to help me here. I thought they still need to be recertified. I
Yes.
think it's a 20-year or 30-year time frame, and I'm not.
Okay. All right, I'm good now. Thank you.
Gina?
I don't have any questions per se, but can we get this presentation emailed to us, please?
Yes, of course.
And in
Yeah.
the future, I know that I've asked this probably in different committees, but in the future, if we can have this ahead of time, it's helpful. Because then if I have the chance, I can look through it. And if I have any questions, I can jot them down ahead of time and see if those are answered. It's just hard to do all of this live when you only have a few minutes.
Okay. Absolutely.
And Melissa?
Yeah, thanks. I somehow managed to disappear myself visually, but I am here.
You were here and now you're gone.
Yeah, it's just weird. Great
you are, you're
presentation.
back.
It's nice to see this much progress. That's a beautiful flat roof. I'm digging that flat roof. And so I want to know more about how the planning, what's the timeline for considering how much solar could go on that flat roof, and how many more of those sweet little carports there could be, and how those capacities relate to the load that you anticipate for the building, i.e. if we are exploring these kinds of things with the Green Bank. Obviously, this is a long-range project, but how do we fold in the sort of feasibility assessment from our side to make sure that we're aligning with you?
Great questions. So yes, it is. You have flat roofs now. I think the challenge with roofs is what we're seeing is that when you need to replace the roof, what happens with the solar panels? I think one train of thought is, well, either you own them, you're leasing them, it expires, et cetera, et cetera. So we did let's put them where we know they can stay and be and remain on the canopies.
Mm-hmm.
They can, as you know, go on to the flat roofs. They can go onto the flat roofs even simpler in new construction, because there can be structure considered to support them. And then that can facilitate the roof change later. The challenge with existing roofs, as you may know, is you have to ballast them, put them down on the roof, either put weights, precast concrete, if you can't anchor them into the existing structure. So
right.
Now is the time, and that's part of why, planning won't start, the detailed planning won't start at least for another year, not year one, but the detailed design will start year 2. But now is the time to start to say, hey, we want to maximize that. We want to, perhaps I'm making this up, or I'm, want to go back and look at all of the existing roofs and the feasibility of adding panels. Great question. And then the last piece is, electrically, I think it can work out very well as far as integrating into either, back into the grid or serving the loads on this facility. We haven't even gotten that far, but you're right. You could potentially try to get to a neutral zero where you're generating as much electricity as the facility used. And I think that would be another way of enhancing the proposition that you're great stewards of the town's tax dollars. So now is the time. Now is the time.
And will you, as your analysis kind of goes forward, be able to, just do the assessment of, likely load and portion of surface area that's needed to meet that electrical load, and what's any more detail on what would be needed to happen in reinforcing the roof?
Yeah, we can take the next pass at it. I think Jeffrey can also help us with the current electrical usage. I know you know that, and start to kind of think about where that might head. But yes.
Yeah, and it's not my place to sort of tell you your scope or anything, and I'm probably the least well-versed in which roof has which issues, but that's helpful to know. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, and did Jamie join us or no? Yes, I can't see everyone at this point. Okay. So look, I'm last. Looks very well to me. All this is conventional construction. We have no need for any auxiliary like pre-engineered structures to hold any of the equipment that's down at the Jablonski. Does it all fit in the existing buildings that we have there?
That's the concept. In other words, we took, say, 11, let's call it 11,000 square feet currently from building and ground and put it here. So the concept is to, yes, fit everything into the addition.
Okay,
And as far as the thinking is that the construction matches the existing construction, as Giancarlo explained. We're trying to keep it similar for a lot of good reasons. One, I think it looks like it fits, but two, it also says, it's a straightforward way of constructing. It's not elaborate. So,
and that does look really good. I was just worried about the auxiliary buildings that we have that are pre-engineered. Would they be, adequate space size for, the snow blowers, all the other stuff that's down there?
well, and that's why we're proposing the 3 additional garage bays for building and grounds, as well as equipment storage behind. One of the things we conceptually looked at was high bay racking, the ability to stack everything that goes in and on their vehicles. And so that's where that thought process was. So right now, no, we're not thinking of adding any pre-engineered buildings, but we're also not thinking of taking them away. In other words, they exist, they function. You're going to see a police facility, though. There is a good spot for a pre-engineered building, but I'll wait and introduce that at the next.
Well, because I just, we're trying to visualize, you go to one building, you go to this one, I like the fact that it matches the existing building that's there, and that you do have the high bay storage and what that does accomplish for you. And I think those are things that we all don't realize until you explain them to us. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I'm all set.
Okay, thank you. So we are going to head over to buildings and grounds, and here the proposal is to, year one, move these folks out both to Javancy on a temporary basis until the addition and to the annex. I think we've got some good numbers on staff, vehicles, equipment, and storage, and it will be temporary. In other words, it's not the final solution, but what it does do is free this property up for sale. And we know that between the town attorney, economic development, and I think you have a real estate consultant, they can dispose of this property. So it too, by the way, is very well utilized. Every inch of this site has, being used, whether it's for storage of materials, storage of front of plows, trucks, both buildings, and then parking up front. It's totally used. So you've gotten your money's worth out of the site. I'll say that. I think, now is the time. And it's so I'll call it landlocked. It is so contained within the residential district. It is in that R32 residential district that, there's obviously no room for expansion, nor would we ever recommend that. So there's the areas that gets us to, call it the 11,000 square feet. And, within the following year, this property can be sold. So that is the recommendation. So now we're going to spend some time at the Town Hall Annex, and we're going to review a conceptual program. And you're going to see this in 2 parts. One is to firm up exactly how the building's being used. And as we all know, it's evolved over time. As it was decommissioned as a school, certain functions remained, some have been added, some have grown, some have used space that they may not have originally used. And I think the other thing that we heard and that we're proposing, and this is, I think, potentially a very exciting idea, is to create rental offices. In other words, to separate this building into 2 parts. And again, you'll see it in the concepts, you'll see it in the plans. And whether the offices are formally rental or not, we aren't really concerned about that at this time. But it's to define an office area. They may be leased for $0 to a nonprofit, or they may be leased and or agreed in an agreement to be used in some contribution to maintenance. But I think the point of all of this is, as we've looked at everything, this building costs approximately $1 million a year to operate. As we all know, it's a large scale building. And I think the goal here is to maximize the utilization of the annex. And I think it's a combination of town functions and potentially outside rental. And again, I don't want to get hung up on the idea of rental, because we've got some time to look at that and how that would be configured. And then the last piece of this is we think it makes an excellent place for document retention. As we know, as a town, you are required to retain documents for a certain amount of time. They should be in a fire-rated, protected storage and conditioned, by the way, storage environment, so that they are retained in place. They don't mold, they don't rot, they don't get wet, they don't get destroyed. And then, yes, you get rid of them in a certain time period. But I think this building has that as an opportunity, and we're proposing that in year one. I think year one also, we start to look at this idea of rental offices, whether it's starter space, whether it's the WeWorks type concept, whatever this may be, whether it's a more formal use of other town functions in these offices, and what does that budget look like? So that's year one. We also want to move Parks and Rec from, and I'm going to try to not mispronounce, but La Magna Center here. And you're going to see next why that's important for social services and the center of town. And then also in year one, move up a portion of building and grounds to the annex. So year two would be to construct the document retention area and start to begin the rental office design. Year three could be construct the rental offices. Page up, there should have been, I missed a slide somehow, and I apologize. So in the set you'll get, we're going to also continue that timeline, and for whatever reason, my slides did not sequence through that. So, all right. And again, I won't try to recreate it here on the fly, but we're starting to look at the timeline and starting to flush this timeline out over that 10-year time frame. And I think right now we're out to about year 7. So why don't I keep going here, because I think you're going to have questions as we get to some of the program slides, some of the more detailed slides. Aerial view of the annex. I think one of the things to start to introduce is to look at the building as a whole and start to look at this entry as the traditional entry. Here is the more utilitarian entry for deliveries, certainly has access to the cafeteria underneath, loading. It is near the pool and the gym, but it is a lower level. And I think that's important to note. Here, the building really reads as a one-story building, with a large space here. And then here's an entry to the second floor, and then the 3-story building, and then working our way around to a 3-story building here. I think the other thing that we've learned and we've focused on is the existing mechanical units on the roof in penthouses. And so we are proposing to retain those. I think there was a discussion at one point about opening this building up. And we're still going to talk about that because I think it brings access to daylight, but it would be focused here at where the skylights are over the library and not here where the penthouse is. I think the other thing that's very striking about this building, and again, Giancarlo is going to show you the design, and everybody knows this, the building is dark. It is a dark building inside for a lot of reasons. One, what we call court depth. In other words, how do I get daylight in here when I can't get access to a window? And then the windows are small, quite frankly. These areas, small windows, fairly spread apart. And Giancarlo is going to describe to you the approach of how to do that, how to bring daylight into the building. But that's also why the skylight, I want to bring it up again, because one of the concepts would be to open this up and bring daylight into that portion of the building. And we have a third concept which can be developed of bringing daylight into the building. But I wanted to introduce that because as a office, whether it's rental, whether you're bringing anyone in here to use an office space, it doesn't have the look or feel of an office. It has the look of a school that was designed roughly in the 60s and conserved on the amount of windows for the reasons that they did when they designed it. So here's the site analysis. Again, it plenty active, plenty well utilized. We're not proposing any changes to any of the Board of Ed fields, the functions there. They're used all the time. I think the site configurations, we're not really proposing any changes to curb cuts and site circulation. We'll talk more about this portion because here's where we're focusing on those offices. And I think it lends itself that, and you'll see it in the floor plan, is that this component of the building could exist separately. It already has some of the fire doors in it. So that's the thinking there. Here is that floor plan. So we've updated this since we last met. These are the accurate square footages, summarizes all those spaces, and I won't go through them now. You're going to see them in 1 second as far as the existing functions of what's in there and what's utilized. But it's a lot of space, over 200,000 square feet of space. And I think the challenge here is, can it be better utilized? And to answer that right away, yes, it can be. It will be a process. It will take a reasonable amount of back and forth with multiple departments within the town. So currently here is what we understand the uses in all of these 200,000 square foot spaces. The upper floor is not really utilized right now, so it remains underutilized. The main level has adult ed in it. And I think, are they utilizing it 100%? We can get into the details, but they could also go into this unused area here, and it may even configure better as we look at the programming for adult ed. Buzz Robotics right now on the lower level is using quite a bit of this space. And while it's a great program, I'm not proposing to change that. I think more formalize the amount of space that Buzz Robotics is using. The pool and the gym remain. And then this is the varsity locker room. And I think there's an opportunity there because it's not utilized. I think one set of locker rooms on the main level is enough. This varsity locker room in the lower level is an opportunity. And that's where we're going to propose to renovate and take that space, open it up, and use it for town storage. It also has direct access to a loading area, makes it easy to bring records in and out, by the way, when you dispose of the records or recycle them, shred them. There's a loading dock there, which allows that to happen fairly easily. The former, well, I won't go through everything. So here is the current, and I'm going to pause right after the next one. We can go back. Here is what we're proposing. So same floor plan, same square footage, not removing any square footage, except here where the skylights are. This plan does contemplate opening the center of the building to allow daylight in. It also has a dotted line or a dashed line across here. And this would be the rental offices or the future offices or the office space. It lends itself well to site circulation. The orange areas are the stair and the corridors are in the terracotta or the reddish color here. You're going to see, and you're starting to see it there in the light imprint, an opening of the exterior of the building. And we won't go there yet because I'm going to pause for comment and questions. But we're starting to think about what kind of office space. I want office space with windows. I want office space that I can either take a suite of offices or perhaps even open open the walls up and put doors in between offices, but an office suite across there, and then move some of the functions into the underutilized spaces. And I think the lower level will look slightly differently as we look at the utilization with town hall records here. But the goal here is to utilize everything within the building, within the 202,000 square feet. So that's the goal. And with there, I'll pause because we're going to see some images in a minute. And I would imagine there's some questions or comments.
Okay, I'm gonna go down through the list. So Bethany,
I'm good, thank you.
Tim,
I'm fine, thank you.
Marie,
Hi, I don't know if we went over this, but the only question that first came to mind is potential income to the price of converting. So I guess my mind is on money right now.
there you go. Walter,
I'm good, thank you.
Wendy,
Yeah, I just have one question. Is it safe to assume by looking at this that approximately 75,000 square feet would be potential rental offices, if you will, or future use or undefined?
Yes, Lydia, that's a good take on, and you took the upper level times 3.
Correct, correct.
Right.
All right, thank you.
No, good question. And I should have covered that, by the way.
put it in your notes for when you bring it to the council.
I did.
Tina, you have any questions?
Yeah, I do. Are we taking into account the wrestling room behind the stage that we had messaged before, talked about before?
To answer your question directly, it hasn't been in the total forefront, but we're not proposing any changes there. So
No, but you're
What do you
talking
think?
about taking out the center of the building and the auditorium, and it's right behind the auditorium.
it's here in the library.
You're moving it to the library?
No, is it here behind the auditorium?
Behind the auditorium. It's right behind the auditorium.
No,
So
the
from
other side.
This side.
Yeah.
Okay. In one of these spaces, Tina?
Yes, it's behind there. It's about a year old. There's no wrestling space at Enfield High. So the wrestling team has their own dedicated wrestling practice space at the annex.
No, we would keep that. I think we've got to focus in on that, to be honest. But we'll keep the wrestling room.
I think if you had to relocate it based on the dimensions, it would be fine. But if you're going to relocate, you just have to take it into consideration as to where you would locate it. As long as we just need to keep space for it, I guess is what I'm
Okay.
trying to say.
Got you. I hear you. So yes, and that's to the point of it's well utilized now. We need to continue that.
Correct.
Okay.
If I could add, I mean, you're taking out the library and opening up the library, so that has nothing. We're not touching the wrestling room, so that's what I see on the plan. So.
Right, but if you look over to the right, we have different things that we've talked about, like the rec department and Buzz Robotics. I don't see the wrestling room there, and I want to make sure that it's being considered.
Because that's the lower level. The wrestling room's on the main level.
Correct, but I just want to make sure it's being considered because they put a lot of work into that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Scott?
Thank you.
Scott, thanks, Tina. Scott?
No, I just wanted to take a moment to reiterate for anybody watching that this is something that this committee's been working on for a long time, but this isn't like the final answer. This is BL's recommendations. So I just wanted to pause for a moment for those watching at home that think that this is greenlit and this is, what we're doing. It's what we're being advised to do by somebody that we thought could give us some good input. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody.
Thanks, Scott. It's a conceptual idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
And
point.
Cindy had a meeting, so she had to leave. Gina, any comments, questions?
I like some of this, but to be perfectly honest, I don't think anything's going to happen in the annex for a very long time. I mean, I think this is wishful thinking for years ahead, but I mean, I like some of the ideas. I don't think that I agree with all of them, but that's it.
You have to start somewhere, Gina. Melissa? No, Melissa, did you leave us after those solar panels? And Jamie and Jeff, do you have anything to add?
Oh, no, I'm all set.
Okay,
I'm good.
okay. And I'm good for now. I just, want to, still absorb. I'm better in 3D than I am
Then
in
we'll-
plan, so.
We'll go
All
there.
right, so go ahead, move
Okay.
along.
So, John Carlo?
Okay. Okay. So let's take a look at this image here. So I think what we looked at, the first approach was, if you remember, the existing windows were in these vertical zones, let's call them, right? These are where sort of the classrooms are. And the thinking here is that we're able to use that existing opening, which is, we looked at the existing drawings, it was about 11 feet wide. And the idea is to utilize these existing openings on each level. And so avoiding structure, which we did look at, and we determined where the structural columns were to avoid those, which basically flank the sides of where you see the glazing. And so being able to cut out that vertical section, really the idea is the sort of the economy of taking that existing condition, minimizing the demolition just in those locations, and inserting this glazed storefront curtain wall system on each level. And so here on this view, you'll see that this is suggested maybe as the entry area. We haven't really identified exactly where that could be, but we're showing that. And then that same glazing system could be repeated on both the sides of this component of the building. And the other thought here too is really avoiding major demolition, is really looking at how can we remove a minimal amount and have a big impact. Also, with this type of glazing, I think it makes it really inviting. And so it makes the building much more attractive. And I think speaks more toward, office environment, that sort of design. Let's see. I think we can look at the other slide. And so here's a view from the opposite side, where you see this system of glazing, being utilized along that side, the suggested entry area. And then we did start to look at the parking area as well and what that might be. So whether that's an extension of the existing or utilizing that area in front of this part of the building, we're thinking maybe this is where the entry may be to the office areas. And it's, I believe, has a good visibility if we end up looking back at the site after. That was also a good factor here, an important factor of the visibility from driving point or outside outside the site. Let's see.
Yeah, it sits on
material.
A corner. Yep.
What was that?
I said it sits on a corner, so it is visible from, right, really all three
It's
sides.
it's very visible. And one of the other thoughts I think I'll mention was it kind of goes back to this idea of bringing the light further into the interior, the internal spaces. And so one idea that we mentioned was the concept of this central core, that courtyard, which allows light to enter into those deeper internal spaces. The other thought, which we don't have it modeled, was another approach, which doesn't require really a lot of demolition, is you could potentially take the interior corridor walls. So as the light passes through these exterior rooms, right, the internal walls within the corridors could have transoms on them. And the transom is a glazed area at the head of the wall, let's say above the door, which could carry the length of a corridor. So if you could imagine that the light is able to penetrate these rooms and then lend itself to further, an interior environment. Material-wise, we're really looking at glazing and glazing system, curtain wall system, looking, with some ideas of maybe this entry area there. I think with materials on the building, I think we're trying to keep everything intact with the existing brick. There's a precast system that you see, that band above, and we stayed below that, so there would, not to impact that system at all. Was there any other, points, John?
No, sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay.
So that really describes, how the thought process is: change the image of this building to bring the daylight in, and to also potentially stand as a separate office function within the former school.
Right.
Okay. So with that, I think Thomas Alcorn. So I'm going to move over to that facility. I think here we really want to focus on the utilization ratio of how densely used the building is. And I think this is the opportunity to relocate part of social services here to the Thomas Alcorn building. Youth services would remain and or be more formalized in the Lamagna Center. And this site can accommodate other expansions and or additional town functions. In other words, it's a large site. We're going to look at it. There's enough space and enough site area to increase parking and or add on to this building. So in other words, the point is this building remains. It is predominantly occupied by the Board of Ed. It is a good building to keep long-term. We think it can be utilized to a higher degree with more folks at that building. It will obviously require an agreement or an understanding and a cooperation with the Board of Ed to bring social services here. But the thinking is that would then free up that site, and we'll see that in a minute. Here's the overall zoning analysis. Again, it's in a residential zone, but is a fairly large scale site. And again, can accommodate anything that is headed there in the future. So roughly a 50,000 square foot building, gross wise. And I think the current, if we do an occupant to square foot ratio, it does point to an underutilized ratio there. So, and so that does lead to social services. Again, they would move in year one. This could happen in year one because we think the space is available, to Alcorn and then also to Lamagna. I think part of that is Parks and Rec would vacate any space they still have at Lamagna Center and be totally moved to the annex. That would then free this property up for sale. So there is the current property. It too is in a residential zone. We'll see it here. Actually, no, I take that back. It's sitting in the middle of a zone commercial, but sitting in the middle of the village center in roughly a residential zone with the church here. It does stand alone as an office building. It's a smaller scale, the 6,300 square feet. Does have adequate parking, and that total, 6,000 square feet can be accommodated in the Thomas Alcorn. So, so should I pause there, Donna, or what do you think?
All right, so Bethany,
I'm good, thank you.
Tim? Marie? Walter?
Can you go back to Alcorn for a minute?
Sure.
Something with the three levels that went over. So the lower level is, the main level is where the main entrance from the front, right?
Yes.
But I believe on the main level that auditorium or whatever is way in the back is on the lower level.
Okay.
Something's confused. It's confusing.
Okay. We'll take a look at that. Okay. Yep.
Because if the main level, because on the main level to the left is where the Board of Ed's main office and the superintendent's office. See this back here? Yeah, the thing that sticks out, that's on the lower level.
Okay. Okay.
That only comes out to the lower level.
Okay.
Just a correction, that's all.
We'll correct that. Yep. Yep. So this space is on this lower level and doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm confused too. Okay, we'll square that away.
Yeah, just double check it, that's all. That's all I had, thank you.
No, thank you.
Wendy?
Nothing, thank you.
Tina?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Scott?
I'm good, thank you.
Charlotte?
So it kind of went fast for me. Social services is gonna go where on there? In Alcorn?
We haven't finalized the location, Charlotte, right, you're right. We have not finalized that location of the program. That's why you're not seeing any of the color in the program whatnot, but yep, your question.
Okay. All right. I just didn't know if we would have enough room in there for that. I'm not sure, but that's okay. Continue on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Gina?
No questions.
Melissa?
No questions.
And I
Thank
just have one comment, and everybody should know, our IT occupies the whole third floor, my understanding. So, you don't want to be moving stuff like that, and it
No.
seems to be working out fairly well. I think, this, like the Jablonski, I think is something that, we really like to see in the near future. And of course, since we started this, we've done other things to be able to expedite potential moves out of the Lamagna. So there's other things going, and it's always a work in process everywhere. So John, back to you.
Okay. So town hall, we know that there are some other initiatives. In fact, like currently there is an agreement, it sounds like, that's moving forward, with terms and conditions and back and forth. And so that may create swing space. It may create a reshuffling of some of the town hall functions. We focused on records and record retention. And specifically that third floor attic space is not a good record retention space. It's unconditioned, it's not protected, both from a fire rating standpoint or a sprinkler standpoint. And it's very limited in both its size and its loading capacity. So we also believe that there may be an opportunity to locate some either standalone or together functions from town hall to the annex. And again, there's a lot of attention that needs to happen in the programming of the annex. And we hear you loud and clear, everything from the changes like to the wrestling area, but all of the changes that are there and going on and consolidating things and making them efficient. So the annex is that opportunity from the town hall. But I think we're proposing to move forward year one with the planning for taking the varsity locker area and converting that to document retention. So we recommend that that start right away because A, it's unused space. It's not even being used right now. B, we think would make great document retention space. And then by year two, start to migrate some of that record retention with the ultimate goal of either freeing up the attic space and or using document retention and have it as a standalone facility for all of the town functions. So again, you've got a great person in charge of all of that. He's doing a great job of keeping things going. But I think, given the scale of the town, given the scale of document retention, it starts to make sense to centralize that and proceed with that right away. Other than that, I think we're, under this master plan, not proposing anything specific. Again, we're aware of what's going on with the bank property and with the adjacent residential property and some opportunities of interconnecting, and we think that's great. Again, sites well used, buildings well used all the time, and no real changes proposed to anything there. Animal control, we've talked about before. Again, it is in a geographic location that makes it hard to find, I think, inaccessible. It also is by itself. In other words, there's no opportunity to share either anything functional. They're kind of off on their own. I don't know. People are back and forth, so on and so forth. So year one, we do recommend that the planning of the new facility off of Moody Road. By year two, construct that and be able to move and close this facility and consolidate this with the wastewater treatment site. Again, it doesn't seem to make sense as a standalone piece of property. Doesn't make sense to sell it, but it would vacate the animal control. This building here would vacate the site. There is the site analysis, the total area, and its location, here on the site. So, and I'll keep going because I think we've covered animal control and we can always double back. Or no, stop, pause, Melissa?
Yeah. All right, so we're going to go out for questions again, John, and we'll see because how much more do you have? Does that wrap us all up?
I've got PD, library, and one more. I'm forgetting.
Okay. All right, so let me quickly go through the list and see if there's any questions at this point. Bethany?
I'm good, thank you.
Tim? Marie?
Hang on, I'm good.
Walter?
I'm good, thank you.
Wendy?
Fine, thank you.
Tina?
I'm good, thank you.
Scott?
All set, thank you.
Charlotte?
Okay,
Gina?
no questions, thank you.
Melissa?
No questions, but I want to take the liberty of a quick comment because my face looked so horrified. I have to moderate a panel in half an hour, and I saw this was scheduled to end at 6:30, so I'll stay as long as I can.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Sorry.
We'll get you a copy.
Yeah, I know.
We're all going to get a copy of
detail,
this.
thank you.
Right. The only comment I have is in this, when are we going to get away from paper? Just a comment that I have. So, John.
Yep. Okay. I'll keep going. I hear you. And I think my short answer is I don't think I am.
Move us along. It'll be our bedtime pretty soon.
Yeah, I'll keep going fast. So we've already talked about fueling. I won't go back over it. I think here is a need for a pre-engineered garage. And I'm going to jump right to, there are vehicles that are stored on site, that command vehicle, and I believe there's one other, it may not even be in this view, that are supposed to be covered. There was a request made, can't we put up some, temporary covering, and you could certainly do that. I think that once these sites are combined, in other words, once this site is combined with other sites, and we look at setbacks, we look at coverage, we look at the potential of a drive here. This is the canine unit here, the officer and the dog. But to set a pre-engineered garage on this site seems to start to make sense. So what we're proposing is that would start to be looked at fairly early after the sites get combined. Look at a pre-engineered garage. It does not have to be conditioned. Now, there's a very affordable approach to covering those vehicles. And then in the future, construct that connector. What I'll do is go through, we can always go back, but in the interest of time, and I'm not trying to rush things, but I hear you loud and clear. So emergency medical services, and here I want to introduce the idea that there is a site that is really not expandable. It is constrained by its current location. There are obviously some concerns with traffic, and I won't go through all of those. But as you look at a 10-year plan, could you expand emergency medical service here? And I think the short answer is no. It's going to start to get very limited to the amount of vehicles, the amount of people, and the use of this site. So what we're introducing is the idea of starting to study this. Is this the satellite location? Is this the main location? And you look at another satellite location. At the central sites all combined, there is an opportunity to build another emergency medical facility. Whether that's the central facility or the satellite facility, we're not trying to solve that. We're trying to suggest that to expand and to keep pace with emergency medical services, you need to look at other sites, and how that happens. Now is the time to start that planning. So that's the thought there. Again, in the interest of time, we can always go back, but the site, here is EMS, the historic original town hall of the school, and then an adjunct piece to the high school there, or access to the high school. There really isn't room here on this site to do much expansion whatsoever. And I think given the location, you could use a second location geographically. So, and then last, the library, and certainly not the least, but I think what we're seeing here is it functions fairly well. It doesn't seem to be a need for expansion. It's a reasonably economic one-story building. I know it has a lower level, but one-story building to operate. It sits on a site also that doesn't offer up an easy opportunity to expand with the school. Here's your only expansion, and it's almost begs the question, why and what's the need with the central library? I think it does function well as a community library. I think there was some discussion about moving it to the annex, but I think its location within the community, within the neighborhood, and both the familiarity and the use of it seems to work well. So our recommendation is to remain status quo there. And with that, I think we are there. So again, in the interest of time, I will pause and turn it back over.
We're going to go through the questions again. Bethany? You have any questions? Bethany? Okay, Tim? Marie?
I guess it's not really a question, it's a comment, Donna. And I appreciate, and again, I was late, so I don't know what the first few buildings were that we went through, but I came in on the annex, and, through this whole pandemic, I'm looking at dollars and cents, and we're looking at buildings in the world in a different place or different time. I'm seeing some spare, I'm looking at all of this extra space that we have at the annex, and I'm thinking, how much money would it be to convert this? And I'm almost looking at maybe we take some of these other buildings and we think about maybe possibly moving to the annex with these other departments and taking those other buildings and selling them to pay for the renovation.
That's what we're doing.
But again, we're looking at Elkhorn. There's usable space. Maybe things can be moved around. I appreciate all the hard work and the time that went into it, but I'm seeing a lot of dollars here. And
There's always a lot of dollars, but we need to know, what works well, what could possibly work, and then we have to look at prices of things. But you can't put the price in front of what you need to do. You have to look at what you need to do, look at the cost of that, and then assess how you can blend those two things together.
well, again, that's
It's not easy.
I know,
Not easy.
more comment. So,
Walter?
No, I just want to thank him for a great presentation. And again, repeat, it's conceptual. Nothing put in stone here. It's just conceptual. So thank you.
Wendy?
No comments, thank you.
Tina?
Yes, I would just like to say to Marie's point, I see her point definitely about the building space and what a post-COVID world is going to look like. One of the things that I do admire about the committee is that when they're looking at different enhancements or moving programs and services, they're trying to keep the programs and services near the people that use them the most. So I definitely think, and I'm fairly new to the committee, I definitely like the approach that this committee takes when it comes to different things like that. That's all I have.
Thank you. Scott?
No additional questions at this time. Thank you.
Charlotte?
I don't have any questions. Just want to say thank you to BL for putting this together.
Gina?
I don't have any questions per se, but I do want to say that I guess I'm just a little worried about how much space we're going to condense. In a post-COVID world, we may be doing the opposite of trying to condense. We may be trying to spread people out. So we're going to really have to think about what we're going to do here. But thank you for the presentation.
Gina, I agree with you. I think that, at this point, we don't know what tomorrow will bring. I mean, we've been working on this for 6 years now. I mean, it sounds like a long time. And we get to a point where we think we might know something and the world totally changes on us. It's not
Right.
an easy situation. It's
Right.
really
I mean, I haven't been on this committee for, over a year, but I know we've been talking about trying to condense services so we don't have duplication of some services. And I get that. This is all conceptual. This is all planning. We're in the very first stages. So I don't think anything's going to happen tomorrow, but we also need to keep in the back of our minds, we may not be able to put an entire department into one area like we used to. They may have to take up 3 times as much space as they used to.
Well,
So
our
it's just
schools
something
and
to-
our schools may be affected by this as
Yep.
well. And we've got them in a position now where they offer a significant amount of programs for our students because of the design of the buildings that we've done. And I'm going to end this with just this is a quote from Winston Churchill that, it says, "First we shape our buildings, then they shape us." And I hate this quote. And then I found a corollary to it. It says, "First we shape our buildings, then they shape us, then we shape them on infinitum." And people have to understand that we eventually have to take control of our buildings and our destinies. So that's how I'm going to end this. And thank John for his presentation. And I think at this point, he says the first draft, but I think I'd like to start to bring some of this to the council, and I would really like to possibly think about bringing the Jablonski to the council. Do I have any comments or considerations on that? I'll put it on the agenda for next time. Okay. Anybody else have a comment or a question? Just shout out because I'm.
Yeah, it's Melissa. I'm fumbling on how to raise my hand.
Okay, Melissa, I'm sorry. I thought you were
Right.
gone to your next meeting.
I'm there. I think that I think this presentation has given us enough conceptual clarity that we should be devoting a chunk of time next meeting to what is or isn't possible in terms of referendum again. And if we're going to try to do anything, the time to craft a communication strategy is now. And I think that strategy is conceptual, and that we should be looking at this in a layered way of, given the sort of low functioning buildings that we know we're going to ditch, but how can we conceive of the use of these central buildings in a condensed scenario or a more expanded scenario, but get that more clear among ourselves.
Yeah, and we will. We'll be talking about it more. And I have to so much agree with Gina that we just don't know what the future is going to bring. We just it's scary. It really is. So if there's no more questions, I think we can go on with the agenda.
Sounds great.
John, you all set from us?
I want to, just before I go, thank the committee for both, time, attention, comment, and the opportunity to present to you. So thank you and take care.
All right. Thank you as well. And we'll keep in touch with you through Jeffrey, and, we'll see. We're going to discuss next time, but I think there's a portion of this that I would like to bring to the council and have because you got to get their feedback, because you're not going anywhere without them.
Yep.
Because they're in the driver's seat.
Yes, sounds great. Just let us know, and Jeffrey will. It's been working well.
All
Again,
right.
thank you. Take care.
All right. You as well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Back
Thank
to
you.
old business. Henry Barnard roof replacement phase 1. Probably lost everybody by now. Do we have any updates on that?
No,
Oh,
I'm
there's
still here,
Chris. I
Donna.
heard him.
I did have to leave, but I'm still here. No
Okay.
updates on phase 1. Phase 2 might be next month.
Okay, and
Money received.
phase 3 has has Gary Harrison gotten the information to the state, and do we have any positive news?
So Gary has been working on his documentation. It's in for approval within the town. And I say within the town because I believe it's at the superintendent's office as well as the town manager's office. After that, it goes to the state.
Okay, because the subcommittee has approved it, so, okay.
Right.
So I should send an email tomorrow and see how they're doing, huh?
So as soon as it gets to the state's hands,
Okay,
I then need the approval from the state in order to. I need the approval from DEMIS, which is Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. That's who this gentleman Bill works for. I need his approval to then take it to the school construction department at the state to submit the grant application. So he's tried. I spoke to Gary earlier. He's reached out to Bill at DEMIS a few times this week. He hasn't heard anything back. He thinks he's on vacation. So hopefully we'll get some sort of an answer next week, and then we'll go from there. As soon as I know anything, because I know Joint Facilities isn't meeting next week. As soon as I know something, I'll email the group and let everyone know. But that's kind of where it stands right now.
right. Our next meeting is the 11th, and I think that's probably our drop dead date. If we don't have good news by then, that section's going to just sit there.
So my drop dead date is the 10th with the school construction department.
Okay. All right.
So if I don't have this resolved by the 10th of June, then we get pushed out to July.
Okay.
You can only submit the roof grant applications within the first 10 days of the month.
All right.
After that, the link that is sent to the superintendents every month is deactivated. So at midnight on the 10th, I'm no longer able to submit anything. And if I don't have, if all the documentation isn't in, then it just, you immediately get pushed to the first of the following month.
Okay.
Since
All
we have a
right.
Donna, since we have a
Tim.
deadline on this, I mean, and we've been talking about this for 3 meetings, I think. If we have to have it in by the 10th and done by then, it's not going to happen unless we light a fire under somebody to get this thing moving. I mean,
Tim, we've been lighting a fire for the past 6 weeks.
yeah.
So it's just, as you know, unfortunately, in March, they went to the joint security. They said, okay, but they didn't do a formal vote is what my understanding is. So they did a formal vote in May, and now we've been pushing to get everything in, all the little loose ends tied up. I mean, this is a roofing project. This is a building that, you know, 80% of the roof is done, and we're sitting on this because we are.
I understand.
I know. I'm extremely disappointed at best. How does that sound?
I agree with you.
So, okay.
From what I can tell you, from my understanding, is that once the information is submitted to the state, to Demas anyway, from Gary, the review is fairly quick.
Okay.
But it's a matter of getting a hold of the gentleman at Demas. So that's where we are now. I know I've talked to Gary a couple of times this week, as recently as 11 o'clock this morning. And as of then, he still has yet to hear from Bill at Demas. So that's why we're assuming he's on vacation this week. There's no out of office message or anything. So if we hear something next week, you know, hopefully at least by Friday, if we get his approval, that's what the state is now. Tom Rowe from the school construction office, he needs the one remaining piece is the approval from Bill at Demas. So as soon as we get that, we should be in good shape to then submit.
All right.
Now,
Do you feel we need our reps and our state senator to intervene?
No, not yet.
Okay. All right. Because
No.
they have offered to, you know, speak on our behalf. Thank you.
Yeah, no, there's really, the state's been pretty clear the school construction department's been pretty clear up to this point with requiring that approval from Demas in order to proceed. Once we get that approval and we submit the grant application by the 10th, you know, then it all depends on how fast the state can turn around our grant application, give us because then we still have the whole process to go through. This is just this is the initial step, is submitting all we're trying to do right now is submit the grant application. We then, so to roll out the timeline, if we submit it by June 10th, we might get a grant approval letter by the end of June. So that means that we can probably, Tom Hibbard, the architect, and myself can bring in the documentation that we need back into the state by mid-July to get the approval to award. So then we're looking at probably an early August start. So we're still on the cusp of being able to get this done before the kids get back to school. But it's going to be very tight. So the further this gets pushed out, that whole timeline just shifts. So and everything right now is taking a couple of weeks. So if you put 2 weeks in between,
but we
each
actually
decision-
had the letter and they pulled it back because of the.
No, we didn't. No, we did not have a letter. They pulled during their review after we submitted the grant application. During the review is when they kicked it back. We did not have the grant approval letter. No.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
So that's kind of where we are with our schedule. So we're close to getting it done before the kids return, but that window's getting really tight.
It's getting, I know. This was a really good year to do roofing and to be out there doing construction and things like that. Probably would have gotten some good labor prices, but it's just, the luck of the draw on this. That's why you got to keep all your stuff done when it's supposed to be done. Just because you don't think it absolutely has to be done doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
That's my sentiment on that. Thank you, Chris, so much for the update and all the hard work.
You're welcome.
Roof management plan. Got any changes, Jeff, or we're just still?
I would continue with what we've discussed before. No new changes or evolutions.
Okay, we're getting ready that, we will probably be going for the council to consideration for a roof referendum is what my hope is. And I'm thinking that, the budget's almost over and we'll keep looking at that. If there's any comments or anything on the roofing referendum? Don't see any hands up or anything. We've gone over that. Okay, and I would. Oh, go ahead, Gina.
No, I said Scott has one.
Oh, Scott, I'm sorry. Scott, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to reiterate that despite letters and approvals and all this other stuff we're going on for Henry Barnard, that it's taken us 3 years to do the Henry Barnard roof. So to your point about getting a roof referendum, we could take 3 calendar years to fix each school and or town facility roof because of the process, because of limitations on what we can spend without going to referendum. So if in fact we do go to referendum for a roof project for our public schools, it's very important that we educate ourselves on what that means, because without it, each building will take 3 years to complete, which means whatever school we do next, that'll take 3 years. School number 2 on the list will be 3 more years. It'll be 9 years before we replace 3 roofs, let alone the 7 or 8 or 9 roofs that are leaking now at the elementary schools or at the middle schools. So I know that sounds scary, but it is something that the public needs to educate themselves on. And as soon as we have more information and costs and how that impacts your taxes, et cetera, we will share it. But it's something that everybody has to take under consideration, because we can't spend 3 years fixing one building when we have 7 or 8 to get to.
And costs escalate at 4%, and it's probably 20% more expensive to do it in phases like that. Our town buildings aren't the size that they require referendum today, but they may be the size that they would require referendum tomorrow. So we have a lot of things that, yeah, we can't keep, you're right, Scott. We absolutely cannot keep on this every 3 years. And when a building like the high school, in 20 years will be here before you know it. It won't be just 3 years. It'll be 5, 6 years trying to do a roof. But, well, I'm hoping that we can go to referendum, and we have, as Melissa always says, we educate the public and Scott, and we keep them, well informed and understand what we're doing. All right, so on E, I would like a request to have a motion to table that vote, because it just keeps reappearing because it hasn't been properly tabled. Because we're not going to be doing the Eli Whitney nor the Hasdeville Memorial. It's been removed.
I'll second.
Okay, who's the first on that? I'm sorry.
Scott.
Okay, can I take a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Tina, are you in favor?
Aye. Tina says
yeah,
aye.
good. We lost your video. Okay, so we're going to table that until further notice. The transfer station upgrades. At this point, I think that we need to, there's money in the budget for the design. And that's going from schematic, from what we had, to design documents, which we can put out to bid. There is no money in the budget. It was proposed as an amendment and it did not pass. So with that being said, if we can get the design done, if we can start to find money in the budget, that we can hopefully start this, but we need to get the involvement of the DPW subcommittee. Now Cindy's not here, she's on it. The only other person is Joey Bosco. So I, at this point, would like to put a request in that this come up on the DPW subcommittee agenda, and we have some real hard discussions about what needs to be done at the transfer station. So I guess I should take a vote to send this to the subcommittee.
Can I put 2 cents in?
Sure.
So last Friday, I had to go over to the transfer station. I pulled in with just one car in front of me. But as I was leaving, the cars were backed up past the dog park, waiting to get in. So I know that the contention on the second scale, but it would, I just think it would just make things so much easier over there if they had 2 scales. But again, I understand, and I'm just throwing my 2 cents in, that's all.
Right.
I'm not over there every day. It just so happened I was there last Friday. And now with the conditions with the COVID they're working, they got, handing you stuff on a stick to fill, and it's just, I feel for those guys. Those guys are doing tremendous work over there. So
everybody, is, and anybody dealing with the public and the general, environment out there, it's not easy. It's just not easy. Any other questions?
I just echo what Walter said. I'm there quite a bit, and they've been shut down for 2 months, so they have a backlog of stuff trying to get it in there. The scale just doesn't work. And you also don't have any personal contact with people, so you can't even talk to them. So they've got to do something. It's going to come back and blow up on them, but I don't have a lot of faith that that's going to happen quickly. So just my 2 cents.
It's under the referendum limit, which is a good thing.
I agree.
So I make a motion to move this to DPW subcommittee.
Second.
With the recommendation that the money be found to do this.
Yes.
From the facilities committee. Can I have a second?
I did, second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
all right, thank you. And we are gonna recommend that, that it be done as expediently as possible. And there's money in there that's not gonna be spent this year. And people have to understand that budgets get replenished at the end of every year. And just because we took your money and maybe put it in the transfer station doesn't mean you're not going to get money next year. Just saying. Okay. So energy performance contract. Jeff, any updates?
They're due to report out June 30th. So probably our first meeting in July, I'll have some new information.
Right. And if you don't use energy, you can't save energy. So we probably have energy savings just from not utilizing our buildings for 3 months. And Melissa's not with us for an update on the clean energy, but I just would like to say that, I really appreciated that Green Bank presentation. And it would be really nice to perhaps, once we bring this to the council for the Jablonski, to involve Green Bank with, what are the economically efficient ways to put solar on this facility. It seems like we could maybe power not only the Jablonski, but the police station and the senior center. Because remember, we're going to combine those into one site. So, but I am surprised at the size of the transmission towers related to solar energy. So if anybody has a chance, they can go out and visit the solar farm that went in out on Broadbrook Road. And very nice detention basins, cleared a lot of land, but I was really surprised at the size of the towers. So take a ride out and take a peek and see what's going on there. Any drink facilities, community, communications?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's rare that we're on YouTube. So welcome to anybody that is new to our club. This club's been meeting for several years. I've been a part of it for quite some time now. So thank you and welcome to our club. I wanted to remind everybody on Facebook, if we do have an audience tonight that we have not had in the past, that there is a Facebook page, Enfield Facilities Committee on Facebook. So at Enfield Facilities Committee, or you can just search Enfield Facilities Committee on Facebook. You'll see that tonight's YouTube link was posted shortly before tonight's meeting started. So that is one way to keep in touch with us. Also, Town of Enfield posts all of our agendas and meeting minutes. But here is one place where if you like it and you want to follow along with some of the things we're talking about, including tonight's BL presentation, that stuff is shared in that manner. There's a couple of us that post there, so it's not just one opinion or one viewpoint. It comes from several sides. So I just wanted to take a minute to share that with people that might be seeing us or joining us for the first time.
Thank you. Any committee member comments?
I did put in the chat line that the superintendent is signing the plan tomorrow.
Okay, great. All right, so I guess I will email Chris to make sure he signs, Chris Romson, and make sure if there's anything that he needs to sign, he will take care of that as well. I don't know what order they have to do this in, but I don't like cutting it down to the wire to do stuff. Any more comments, questions, concerns? I'll take a motion to, our next meeting is the 11th of June, because we are the 2nd and the 4th Thursday of the month. So put that on your calendar if you want to join us.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Secretary Tina, if you need the roll call, let me know. Email me and I'll email it to you.
I won't need it. Tina Demers was on. I was a little bit late. Yeah.
Yeah, the other Tina.
Yep.
We still can't hear you, girl.
Sometimes you have to turn it on, I think.
Just put thumbs up if you're good. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thumbs up.
Good night, all.
Good night.